to the Patio paradise where we were sat that night. A virtual bar, number one, feel goodbye. I've got a fag-ass fantasy, and it's far from black and white.
My guest for episode 14 is none other than Richard Young, Grimsby's favourite son. I put that one together myself, Youngy. And Youngy has been around the business for 20 years plus now. He's done all facets of the business. He's done all sorts of jobs. You name it, he's done it within the business. He's attached with BWR out of Grimsby most recently, and they're running loads and loads of events. And as per usual, we talk about the origins of Youngy watching wrestling, getting into it, his favourites. Another great interview, and we are getting through these now. I'm so glad I've got to 14 episodes, and I thank everyone for the support. So here we go, episode 14 with Richard Young, aka Youngy, Grimsby's favourite son. It's my honour and privilege to have the ring announcer from BWR, Richard Young, on the line today. How's it going, Rich?
Stewie, I'm very, very well. Beautiful day, a lot going on, and always love to talk about Gramps. So happy to be here.
I appreciate you sparing some time for me, man. I really do. Now, we're going to get into the origins of you in the business, how you got started. But my first question, as always, as I ask all the guests, how did you get into wrestling?
Well, my earliest memory is, because I've listened to a few of these, and there seems to be a pattern that people don't have Sky Television. I was the same, I didn't have Sky Television. And I remember being maybe 11 or 12, and there was a lad at school, and he had a VHS copy of WrestleMania 8. So obviously Sid and Hogan and all that, like a Macho and Flair. And I remember seeing like pictures of Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker and Legion of Doom in shops and things like that, but didn't really know what they do. I thought it was some kind of TV show. And then when I watched it, I was just blown away. Like straight off the bat, the colour, the personality, all that kind of stuff. I just thought it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So that was kind of the start of it. And then that same guy, a lad called Aaron, he was an absolute wrestling fanatic. Him and his family used to go to kind of local show, Dale Martin promotion shows that were in the local area, and he took me along with him. And then I got to see a different side of wrestling. And then there was a video shop near our house that used to do WCW tapes. And he used to get rent. I remember getting Capital Carnage, the one with RoboCop.
Yeah.
The 12-year-old me thought that was the greatest thing in the world. It's like, it's wrestling, it's RoboCop, this is just amazing. And then, obviously, in hindsight, it wasn't the greatest, but, as a 12-year-old, thought it was absolutely fantastic. And then from there, TNT started to show Nitro. So I actually ended up seeing more of WCW because I didn't have Sky Sports.
Yeah.
So I was watching Nitro every week on TNT, but always just remained... Loved it. I just absolutely loved it, and I was a proper fanboy. Still am after all these years. Absolutely love it.
That's the key, mate. We're still watching it. I was in the same boat with the Sky. I used to get it recorded onto VHS, as I've said before. So, yeah, it was good. It was a good time though when we had WCW and WWF going at it every week.
It was really exciting. I think, and maybe AEW NXT now. Maybe that's kind of the start of a new kind of era in that sense. And I really hope so for the people of my age. The people who are that age where I was, kind of 14, 15, to watch that then. It was so exciting, and and then getting kind of Power Slam magazine and even PWIs and WE magazine and all that kind of it was almost there was more an innocence to it without having the internet. Even though it was great to have the internet that came along and you found out kind of the inside bits, then there was more intrigue, there was more mystery. I kind of missed that.
Who did you gravitate to from a performer standpoint? Who were your go-to wrestlers at the time? Around that time you were talking about.
Well, obviously, Randy Savage was the first person I ever saw win a belt. So that instantly, Randy Savage was kind of like, oh, he's amazing. Again, it's so colourful, and he glided really. He moved. Randy Savage always moved really well for a heavyweight, didn't he? Hogan was always a bit kind of stiff and a little bit kind of, you could see that early on, but Savage moved like a cruiserweight, but was a heavyweight. And I was always kind of, and then Shawn Michaels kind of really took off. I always remember the first WrestleMania I ever watched live, and I went to a friend's house, was the Iron Man match, Bret and Michaels. And I distinctly remember the whole room in awe of Shawn Michaels and just supporting Shawn Michaels. And yeah, he the guy was just amazing. Still is amazing. My eyes, absolutely, and so yeah, Savage and Michaels obviously love the British Bulldog. I was at Birmingham the night that he lost to Shawn Michaels.
Mate, remember it well.
And it was a near right. It was the first WWF show I ever went to live.
Oh right, okay.
And it was just and a really good one to have, wasn't it? Because it was an excellent card, wasn't it? But I just remember the place nearly rioting when Michaels won, and yeah, fantastic, loved it.
I watched that on Box Office. I didn't manage to get over there. Did SummerSlam '92, but obviously, I bet you were in awe that night. The matches. It was a good card for the UK one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. You had Undertaker, Bret Hart. Obviously Michaels and Bulldog. I think Vader and Savio Vega, were on that night. They had a decent match. Triple H, Foley as well. So yeah, it was a really good card. Really good card.
What match types did you like?
I was always a tag wrestling fan.
Yep.
I always loved watching. I still do actually to this day. I love a good old-fashioned tag team match, one that's given a bit of time. And then I remember getting the VHS of Survivor Series, and I want to say '89, the one with it's the one where all the tag teams are tagging up. So the Brain Busters, the Bulldogs, the Heart Foundation, all them kind of, and just that amazed me. I love that. And so I always loved proper tag wrestling. So anything from the Rockers, the Bulldogs, even Legion of Doom. I know Legion of Doom are not maybe notorious for the work rate, but as a teenager, you see these guys coming out and they look absolutely huge, and the face paint, they just look absolute menaces, and everything they do looks close to real as possible. Than it probably was. But yeah, I think if you give me a preference to things, give me a good tag match any day.
It's a good answer. It's nice to hear about, you talk about tag teams, and not many people have on previous episodes. So that's great to hear that. And my God, we were blessed with some great tag teams, weren't we, when we were younger?
Oh, absolutely. The work rate. I mean, if you talk from a work rate perspective, which I know you when you're that age, you don't really know about, but you just see the cool moves and the way they move. Them tag team wrestlers, you're talking Dynamite Kid, Bulldog, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, all came, and Anderson, Tully Blanchard, all came from that tag division. They had the best individual workers, and they were working tags. Unbelievable.
How did you get your start in wrestling yourself? What was your first role within wrestling?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a convoluted story, but I'll explain. So, many of you, I'm guessing some of your listeners probably won't know this, but there's a guy who comes from Grimsby and is a wrestler by the name of Steve Knight. He wrestled for the UWA when it was on TV. He was one of their champions. He was tag team champion for them as well. He also was the FWA tag team champion with Alex Shane, and that was about as well. Well, Steve was promoting a local wrestling show in the area, and I at the time I was 14, and I had a paper round, a local paper shop, and Steve came into the paper shop basically to ask if the paper boys would deliver his flyers for his show. Well, I'm a massive wrestling fan, and I'm like, well, I would do anything. He was like, yeah, we'll give you a free ticket to the show, and you can come along. And I went along, and they had, he was on there, and Drew McDonald was on that show, and a few others kind of that British backbone back then. And I couldn't believe that there was a really good wrestler from Grimsby, little old Grimsby. And so fast forward a couple of years, and they had the first UWA tapings in London. I was 15 at the time, maybe 16. And it's funny because I've literally just seen Steve. I've been for lunch with Steve about an hour ago. And so I went on the train with a friend because I was so excited that this guy from Grimsby was going on a national TV taping. So I went from Grimsby to London on the train as a 15-year-old, and went and watched that show, and he did fantastically. He looked great. He was on against Doug Williams, I believe, and Jodie Fleisch that night. And I wrote a report. Do you remember the old UK fan forum?
I do. I do. To be fair,
yeah. The old UK fan forum was kind of in its infancy then, and I wrote a report on the show. And in the small world thing, who happened to message me to thank me for the report? Steve Knight. And Steve didn't remember me from the paper, but I mentioned, I'm from Grimsby as well, and that was that. And we kind of just struck up a friendship from there. And he then was promoting shows under the UWA banner. So when I was 16, he went, right, you can referee for me, and that was it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I think the first match I ever had was Doug Williams versus, I think, a guy called Dino Linsky. That was the first match I ever refereed, and we went from there.
You're a bag of nerves.
Oh, completely. You think you know, don't you? I think when you watch it, you think, the referee's job's easy. He just counts 1, 2, 3, doesn't it? And then when they're talking to you in the dressing room or whatever, and they're actually explaining what you need to be here for this, and you need to tell me this, and you need to make me aware of the time. Suddenly, there's a lot more to it than you think there is, and that's when you realise, am I in over my head here a little bit? And I remember kind of early on making a few gaffes, but nothing that ruined matches or anything like that. But you just learn with time, and then obviously with time, the trust of people you work with comes, and obviously I got more shows after that.
Awesome, man. I suppose, you had to be put in the deep end, I guess.
It's a different, I think it's bear in mind, that's 20 years ago, so the generation was a little bit different then as well, because it's the kind of the fallout of the world of sport guys, really. It was the kind of back end of their careers, coming up to this, what is the last generation, I suppose, the people like Doug and Jodie Fleisch and Johnny Storm coming through then. So it was a different generation to it is now, and a less forgiving generation. They didn't, people weren't allowed in the dressing rooms willy-nilly and things like maybe they are nowadays. You had to kind of earn respect. So it was a very, very different environment.
I know, obviously, you hear about the backstage etiquette, and I'm sure it's still in place now, but I bet even, from what you're telling me, even more so than the etiquette.
Oh, absolutely. The dressing rooms are a lot more relaxed now, I think. It's not to say that, there's certainly boundaries, absolutely. But, now the Band-Aid's been ripped off kayfabe, so to speak. I think there is a lot more of a relaxed nature. It's seen more as performance now. But then there were still wrestlers that took that very seriously and took kayfabe very seriously and still wanting to protect that. And still, if you had to earn the right to be there. I wasn't allowed to. The first show I ever did, it was a small chain. It was a show called Casablanca. It was a place called the Casablanca Club, and it was a pretty small venue. And changing rooms weren't massive, but I wasn't allowed in changing rooms. I had to stay in the hallway and get changed there, and then it was, you can come in when we tell you to come in.
Do you think it is needed in some respects now, that sort of, or do you think because it has moved? Because it has moved on, it's not needed.
I think we're past that point now. I do think that I certainly think that there's got to be not a hierarchy, so to speak, but I certainly think that maybe there has to be more respect shown to perhaps the more experienced guys. I've been in locker rooms where people that maybe had 3 or 4 matches in the business have got the stuff lied out and they're taking off a massive chunk of the changing room and things like that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking to yourself, there's guys here who've been in this business for 15, 20 years that are not that demanding, so to speak. But it's changing, and I'm always one to you don't fight change. It is what it is. Life changes, we all move on, things change, and there's no point being a bitter old man and going, well, back in our day we did it like this. You've got to move on.
How long were you reffing for then?
I think I ref for about, on and off, I think I ref for maybe 10 years. I did, what used to basically happen was that Steve would get a booking and he would go, I've got a friend who was a referee, would you like me to bring him with you? And they'd go, yeah, fine, because that's another person ticked off a car list and that's another car full, and that's a cheaper booking for them, so I get bookings through that way. But then when Steve got to do FWA, so when FWA kind of booked him, that was the time where they started to get on TV with a wrestling channel. I pretty much got every FWA gig after that. So I think FWA was pretty much the last refereeing that I did, thinking about it.
Cool. Obviously, I remember FWA fondly. Who, just for the listeners, who was passing through FWA at the time?
Oh, it was a really great time, really exciting time. You had Doug Williams, Birchall, Alex Shane, Jodie Fleisch, Johnny Storm. You had the American, obviously the imports, so I've worked on the shows with CM Punk, Chris Daniels, Daniel Bryan, all the ECW guys that passed through. It was a mega exciting time. Like it was such a buzz to be part when it was in its peak, and then them shows at Broxbourne. I did always remember doing the finish for the Alex Shane Steve Corino match. And I don't know if you remember that angle, but it was built up for like a year where they did a shoot kind of thing where Steve Corino went online and claimed that Alex Shane had cheated him out of money or whatever, and they built it. And actually, Corino then appeared on a FWA show, and they did a big blow-off match at Broxbourne. And I did the free count for that. There'd been a couple of referee bumps, and I came in and did the third free count, and that place exploded, absolutely exploded when that finish of that match came in. It was so exciting. It really felt at that point that we'd cracked it. We were certainly close to cracking it.
It was the lead promotion at the time. Obviously, we didn't have as many promotions then, did we? As we have now in Britain,
No, and in a way, FWA kind of was its own worst enemy in that sense, because it was the first to kind of show we can book people from America, we can get these indie talent, and we can make it and enhance our show and work this very different style. It was, and because of that, a lot of people then came along and went, "Oh, we can do that as well." And then suddenly 1PW came along, and a few others came along, and the market started getting stretched then, because suddenly there was competition. Not to say that competition's a bad thing, of course, but and then a few of the FWA guys started getting signed as well. Yeah. The indie guys were kind of starting to thin out, and just a lot of things really, and suddenly FWA wasn't fashionable anymore. A bit like, I suppose it's a bit like the TNA situation in the States, where for a long time they were the fashionable number two.
Yeah.
And now it's not seen like that anymore. And it was kind of like that with FWA. They were seen as the kind of the fashionable alternative to WWE in this country. Probably the worst thing that happened to FWA was TV, in hindsight, because it was a great live product, but it perhaps didn't translate so well on TV. And I think once that happened, it was kind of the beginning of the end, unfortunately.
Were the other upstart companies around that time, do you think they were going on the same ethos as FWA, or am I wrong to say that?
Oh, I think so. I think a lot saw that model and went, that is a model we've got. 1PW, certainly. I think a lot of people saw that model and went, oh, that works. Oh, we can do that. And plus as well, I hate to say the word mark, but there was a lot of mark promoters out there as well at the time who would go, essentially would just marking for themselves because they could book somebody from America and pay them extortionate amount of money. I mean, some of the money that 1PW were paying people, we couldn't afford to compete with that. They were paying extortionate amounts. And from there, which is ironic, because I've actually in recent months started speaking to Steve Gullenway, actually, which is the irony. But yeah, we couldn't cope with that. And they'd say there was a lot of small things, but that was a massive contribution.
Do you think they should have gone with local talent and national talent then, more so than going for the big international names? Do you think there should have been? I know they do that now. I know the promotions go with that, and they do book, from abroad as well.
It was a catch-22 because unfortunately, when they were trying to sell them initial shows, then Bethnal Green and things like that, the international stars were the draw. And I think the problem is then you become a victim of your own success. Because the expectation comes, well, every show's got to have international names on it. And FWA did try and then weasel it out at the end. They did try to kind of like push away the international talent and start promoting more with purely British shows, but because the audience had almost been spoiled, and because they could see international names elsewhere, they slowly started leaving FWA, which was such a shame.
Who else did you work for?
I did, as a ring announcer, I did IPW's first few shows.
Yeah.
I worked for, when FWA folded, as a ring announcer, I worked for Greg Lambert at XWA, who I'm still great friends with today.
I read his book.
Oh, he's a lovely man, great mind for the business, really, really good creative mind for the business. I can't say enough good things about Greg. He's a great lad. In fact, when I was on Popmaster this morning, he messaged me instantly. Went, "You're on Popmaster?" I was like, yeah, because he's been on it himself. So that's a different story. But so I worked for them. I worked for BCW in Scotland.
Yeah,
they were the first person I ever ring announced, and they did. I mean, they brought some real names across. I mean, I remember doing the show. It was a day. Ironically, it was the day that Eddie Guerrero died. Doing the show with D'Lo Brown and Mick Foley in Kilmarnock. Because me, Steve Knight, travelled with D'Lo and Mick to the show. So they were really kind of like really spending money on imports. But now, I mean, Graham McKay, who's the promoter there now, even because Scotland's got such a good scene now, which wasn't the case then. Doesn't need to do that anymore, and he still runs to this day. He still gets great crowds, and fully deserved, because they're a hard-working bunch up there.
You did spread your wings then.
Yeah, it was a case of anywhere where Steve went, I went, and it was thankfully that promoters had the trust in Steve. If he said, "I know this guy can do a job," they went, "All right, we trust you." And I was very, very fortunate just to have a friend that, helped me along the way. Really, he almost acted as my agent, because I get a message from him going, "You're free for this day. We've got a booking or whatever," and that's how it works. But I was, if I didn't meet Steve, that wouldn't have happened. So I'm very fortunate.
Everything happens for a reason, Richard.
It does, absolutely.
Superb. What sort of numbers were the promotions drawing? Obviously, the promotions you've talked about at the time.
Yeah, Scotland was a mixed bag. I remember they used to have a venue in Kilmarnock which used to do really, really well. They used to pack that place out, 300, 400 a show. But then they'd do other places in Scotland and it'd be dead. You'd be lucky to get 180 people. I remember doing a show and it was like in a village hall. Maybe had 80 people in, and they booked Mitsuharu Misawa on the show. We're talking like this Japanese legend who's been used to selling out shows at, Corrigan Hall and all these places, and there he was in a village hall in Carluke in Scotland with about 80 people there. Very bizarre. I mean, doing the shows like did the Coventry Sky Dome for it was the Wrestling Channel show, but FWA were promoting it vicariously. 2,000 people.
Was it International Showdown?
International Show. I worked as a timekeeper on International Showdown. So they were getting great crowds. But then, when IPW first started, they were maybe getting 150, 200 in. Greg at Morecambe was always getting good crowds. He got a solid 300, 400 with every show, and they were very much local story show. So he was very clever at the way he booked it, so every show had an ongoing story to the next one. So, and people had a reason to come back.
It's cool, man. I'll tell you what, you're multifaceted with all the jobs you've done in and around the business. That's I find it incredible, obviously, because I've spoke to the previous people and they've done maybe one area of the business. It's it's refreshing to hear that you've done a little bit of different. You've been all over the business, which is cool. Different jobs.
Yeah, and obviously I mentioned to you previously, we promoted as well, and that's, you want to talk a tough job, that's a tough job. And I would, you've got, if you want to promote, my word, you've got to dedicate time, because that is, I think you don't realise the logistics of promoting until you do it. It's all good just putting a card together and trying to market something, but actually, the amount of people relying on you as a promoter, once you actually do it, unbelievable. You don't even realise the responsibility involved.
What were What made it challenging? I know that's probably a broad question.
Yeah, well, so basically we ran a couple of shows in Hull under the banner of IWP, International Wrestling Promotions. We ran it under, and it was a big venue. So firstly, our first aim was the promotion of it. So the promotion of it in our heads, in me and Steve's head, was that if the majority of this city don't know there's a wrestling show going on, we've failed. That was our philosophy. And obviously this is before the internet became massive and it was easier to promote on social media and things like that. So we would literally spending days, full days going and postering and flyering and going to local sporting events and getting the word out and just trying to hit as many people as possible. That was the first stage. Steve dealt with all the kind of the wrestler side of it, but obviously on the day, then you've obviously got to deal with the booking and the promoting and the time ordering and the ring coming, merchandise, and all these things that you maybe take a little bit for granted when you've not got experience of it. But all them things need sorting. And then we had that show, that first one that we did there, which we were very thankful, got a massive crowd, it got over 1,000 people. The only picture we had on the poster was Jake Roberts. We booked Jake Roberts for the show, and Jake Roberts, it was about maybe 3 or 4 hours before the show, and he wasn't there. And Pitbull Mike from the UK Pitbulls, who's still a really good friend, he was living quite near Jake at the time. And we were like, "Have you heard anything from Jake?" He went, "Oh, I'll ring him." So he rings up Jake Roberts and he goes, "Oh, Jake, where are you?" And he goes, "I'm in Portsmouth." Now, if you know your geography, Portsmouth and Hull, quite a distance. We're talking at least 4 or 5 hour drive. He got the wrong day for the show. He thought the show was the week after. So suddenly, there was no point even saying to Jake, "Come to the show." So we had to come out at the beginning. We had to rearrange the show. Now, this is, and I thank Pitbull Mike for this because his idea pretty much saved the show. Spud, a very young Spud, was there, and he suggested that instead of Jake Roberts in this tag match, to put Spud in this tag match. Nobody knew who Spud was at that time, really. He'd never been featured on any major shows. And Spud agreed to do a balcony jump for us for very little money, I'd like to point out as well. And because of that, the crowd absolutely forgot that Jay Roberts wasn't even there. They were absolutely in awe of him. And even though they didn't know who this guy was, suddenly it was like, "Oh, word, this is something we've never seen before live." And at the beginning of the show, because I was ring announcing as well, I announced, "Look, if anybody wants a refund, please go to the reception and claim your refund." Out of 1,000 odd people, we literally had one person. And so the stress of that, all that stress, and that relief. But that's the other thing when you're a promoter as well. You've got to think you can only do so much, but you're also reliant on other people. You're reliant on people turning up. You're reliant on, especially when you're an independent promoter, and we've seen that at the moment with BWR. Talk about later. But you're so reliant on people doing posters for you, or designing, or maybe the wrestlers turning up, or everything going to plan, or people not being stuck in traffic. All these things that you just take for granted. And we were just doing a couple of shows. You imagine that promoters that run all the time, they've got these stresses every day. So anyone who does it, my hat goes off to you.
I can't get over how many promotions we've got in the UK now. I know it's been going on for many years now, but it's superb. But it's cool to hear that, booking shows, and as a fan, I take that for granted. You don't think about the inner workings of the business that you had to deal with.
That's what it is. It's a business, so it's easy to forget that. It's one thing being a fan and going, "Oh, this is my dream card, and I've got these people I can do this." But that's it's a very small part of a very big cog. What I would say to anybody who wants to promote is try and work alongside experienced people that you trust. People that have been there and done it, or at least have a couple of wrestlers on the show. If you ever promote a show, try and have experienced hands on there, people that are gonna that know them ins and outs, that you can trust, and they can pass back knowledge. I think always look at that side of it. Absolutely.
I think we should maybe speak about BWR then, and what.
Let's
hit it. I think So, what was your role within BWR?
Yeah, well, basically, BWR came about 2.5 years ago. And just to explain how BWR came about, Grimsby's always had quite a strong wrestling scene over the years. Back in the day, like I mentioned to you earlier, that I used to go and watch Day on Night promotions, and this was kind of mid-90s. And then before that, Brian Dixon and Dale Martin used to all run shows in the area. They used to run shows literally against each other, half a mile away, and they both used to be packed out. So Grimsby Cleethorpes has always had a strong wrestling threshold. When I was with FWA, we used to run Cleethorpes, the Winter Gardens. All Star Wrestling came back and run locally, so it's always been a busy market. And then 10 years ago, maybe there was a promotion called Real Deal Wrestling. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I haven't.
Yeah, so basically they ran Grimsby and Cleethorpes quite a lot, and it's with a lot of the talent that BWR use now. So, but towards the end, and they had a training school as well, and I did a few shows for them, like on and off, as a ring announcer. And so when they kind of fell by the wayside, and some of the lads that had kind of trained with Real Deal Wrestling didn't have a platform anymore. So they created their own platform, which was BWR. So ironically, Steve Knight gets involved, even though he wasn't even living in the country at this point. So basically, so Steve was back in the UK, and they asked Steve to come and guest referee a match. Doug Williams was in the match, and I came along to the show with him, and it was a classic. Now, you always hear the old adage of always bring your gear. Always bring your gear. If you're a wrestler or a ring announcer or a referee or whatever it is, and you're going to a wrestling show as a fan, always bring your gear, because you never know. And look at whilst I was there, the ring announcer, they weren't sure about the ring announcer they were using, and I was there, they went, "Would you ring announce tonight?" And I went, "Yeah, why not? I'm here." And so I ring announced the show for him, and then from there, the promoters who were the other two promoters, Kay and Adam, approached me about kind of helping them, write the shows and book shows. And so we run shows pretty much every month in a few different venues locally. Our main venue is the Memorial Hall in Cleethorpes, which is a fantastic old British wrestling venue where I went to my first ever show. And we run regularly, and we've used some really, really great people over the kind of the last few years. Kip Sabian, Pete Dunn, Sugar Dunkerton, Cody Hall. We're using the Grizzled Young Vets in a couple of months' time, Jimmy Havoc, Jody Fleiss, Johnny Storm, Doug Williams. So, and as well as some really, really talented local guys at the moment who I've got great belief can go on and really do something in the industry. We're running shows to healthy crowds every month, and there's a great buzz for it. And it's, in 20 years, it's the most I've ever enjoyed wrestling, and that says a lot, because I've been and seen a lot, so it's great.
That was quite an array of talent. That then you just fired off.
Yeah,
brilliant. Obviously, the grizzled young vets are not far away from me here. Brilliant. I thought with NXT UK and that they weren't going to be able to, promotions weren't going to be able to book him, but obviously it's not the case, is it?
Certain promotions are, I don't want to say on WWE's blacklist, but I think WWE don't like certain promotions using their talent. We have had the hit of WWE quite a bit. We used Pete Dunne a couple of times when he was champion, when he was WWE UK champion, and it was but unfortunately they started to enhance once the UK brand started running more shows. They started to be a lot more picky and choosy about what talent can go and work elsewhere. Only certain people have got exclusive deals. In fact, I'm not even sure if any of the UK guys have got exclusive deals because, even Pete Dunne is still working for certain promotions, though I think they might be WWE affiliated with promotions like Progress and ICW and places like that. But essentially, what happens is, for the guys that are on what they call the retainer contracts, which essentially they get paid to give WWE priority. So say Grizzled Young Vets, for example, if NXT UK had a show that night, there was no way we're using them because WWE had priority. After that, if WWE don't need them that night, if there's no requirement for them to be used, then they're allowed to take bookings with WWE's permission. And that's kind of how it works.
Cool, good bit of insight. I've learned something there. That's brill. Just to go totally off the promotions and the work you've been doing, what superstars are you liking at the moment in the present day?
Are we talking worldwide?
You can go worldwide. You can go local to you, national. Yeah, just.
Yeah, we'll go world, national, UK.
Lovely.
We'll go in that order.
Yeah.
I mean, AJ Styles, I still think he's absolutely amazing, phenomenal. I should have got that pun in, but you watch AJ Styles every weekend, and I met AJ early on at FWA, and if somebody had said to me then, this guy would become this kind of working for WWE as a main event guy on a regular basis, I would be like, no chance. That ain't happening. I mean, not to say that, not to be disrespectful to say he was bad, but that style of wrestling that he was working then, you would never think what he would evolve into, and he's just amazing. He's absolutely fantastic. I really like Cody Rhodes at the moment. I thought that match with him and Dustin at the AEW pay-per-view about 3-4 months ago, wasn't it? Fantastic. Best match of the year for me. Just told a brilliant story, emotional. It ticked every box of the style of kind of wrestling that I like. So I'm a big Cody Rhodes fan. As well, Seth Rollins is great, isn't he? I mean, I love the Fiend. Is an amazing character, though. We could talk about Hell in a Cell, but that's a different story.
I've not actually watched it yet, Rich. Believe it or not.
No, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it either. But obviously, I've been told what happens. I'm like, it's a bit cringy. But there you go.
I don't know about the red lighting.
No, I'm not keen on that. No, I think it doesn't need. They've already done enough to show that character has got presence and has got threat. That's just over egging the pudding. It's almost like when they get to the 5th or 6th film in a horror series, where it's a bit like, come on now, it doesn't need to go to this extreme. that's kind of what it's like. But that's the best way I could describe it. But so they're kind of a few nationwide. I mean, UK wise, obviously Kip Sabian's gone to AEW. He's absolutely superb. Ricky Knight Jr. is phenomenal. I'll put that out there now. Ricky Knight Jr., if he's not starring in a big promotion in a few years' time, I will eat my hat. He is absolutely superb.
Mr. Colwell's hot on him.
Oh,
he loves him.
He absolutely does. He's the second coming of his dad. I mean, when I see his dad and I see him, the way they move, the way they look, the way they talk, he's identical, but he's phenomenal. He's very, very good. And when we're lucky, we use him in BWI quite a bit, and he's our cruiserweight champion at the moment. And he's feuding with Robbie X as well, who is also absolutely fantastic. Really, really good worker. I'm really high on Brady Phillips at the moment. Brady Phillips, I think, has got a huge future. Tall. He reminds me of a young Drew McIntyre. I worked with Drew quite a bit in Scotland when he was really young, and you always saw that there was something there. And Brady Phillips reminds me of that. There's something about him. He's got charisma. He's got a great look. He can work. I think there's something very special in him. And local wise, our champion Reece Ryan Reese started when he was very, very young. He was about 14, 13 when he did his first merchants. Now in his early 20s. He actually lives in London now, but he is originally from here and he comes back for kind of every show. He's super charismatic. He's got acting background. You can see he's very, very different to what a lot of people offer. He's very character driven, which you maybe don't get a lot with British wrestlers nowadays, but he's very much about the character, and I think he's got a big future. And the other one, we talked about tag teams earlier, are the Rourke and Cole Express, Scotty Rourke and Cole Quinzel. I don't know if you follow kind of social media at all or much, but Scotty recently got a 3-part documentary on Radio 1, and it was about how wrestling saved his life, and that's what it's called, Wrestling Saved My Life, and it's on the BBC Sounds app now for anyone who wants to listen. And basically it's a chronicle because, you know, he's come through a really bad bout of mental health problems and depression, and it's about how essentially how the outlet of wrestling has helped him. And he's a super honest, very I wouldn't say a charismatic guy like a Rock, but just a naturally. I call them the wrestling version of Ant and Dec, the two of them. I think they've got a very kind of quiet, deprecating sense of humour, very funny, but can work. They're really, really good, and they're starting to get now a lot more bookings nationwide. And I really hope that something happens for them, because I honestly think it's a bright future, and I'm really proud that we kind of started them off. So yeah, it's great.
That was cool, man. That's good. Good array of talent, local, national, international. No, it's cool, man. I'm just going back to AJ Styles. In my opinion, just glad they managed to get him, because obviously he was doing so well in Japan, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. There was always going to be, if he didn't go to WWE, there was always going to be that question mark on his career, I think. There was always going to be that kind of, but he never went to WWE. And let's be honest, like, a lot of people were probably cynical when he signed with WWE and he debuted, they'll ruin him, they'll not. But he was champion within 4 months of being there. Who would have thought that, really? Like, who would have honestly thought that they would really, really kind of like give AJ Styles that ball, and he took that ball and he ran with it. And I think I read last year that he earned something like $4 million in the last year. Well, there you go. There's your answer to why you go there. He's doing some of the best work in his career, and he's earning for it as well. And more power to him.
I wonder how this draft's gonna go.
Yeah, I wonder. I think it sounds like the more. I think the bigger names are going to go to SmackDown.
Yeah,
by the sound of it.
Choose of Fox. Yeah,
Fox wants that legitimacy, doesn't it? It might not be a bad thing for Kofi perhaps to come to Raw. That might not be a bad thing. Or maybe the New Day as a whole to go to Raw. I wouldn't be surprised to see AJ Styles go back to SmackDown. Obviously, Brock will go to SmackDown, I'm guessing, because he's champion, isn't he? So yeah, we'll see on Friday, won't we?
I think just obviously the less established talent now on Raw with those 3 hours, it could be really good, couldn't it? And then obviously, like you say, the established talent go over for 2 hours on a Friday. It'd be cool, like you say, to get some of the younger ones more established and give them a chance maybe in that 3 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe with perhaps the less focus of Raw being the flagship show now. I think perhaps with the shows having more of an even keel, there'll be. You'd like to hope that there's going to be more faith placed on the people on Raw a little bit to kind of especially they've got a 3-hour show to film, so you can afford to have a few more. Maybe the less used talent. I mean, Buddy Murphy is a prime example. Whenever I've seen Buddy Murphy, I've been really, really impressed. But since that kind of match with Roman Reigns that he had on SmackDown, I think he had a match the week after, he's never been used on TV since. But that's because it's with adverts, it's less than 2 hours, isn't it? You're talking an hour and a half of wrestling, aren't you? So it's someone like him will benefit from having that extra hour, maybe going to Raw and seeing where his career can end up from there.
I love the sets, Rich, as well. I like the set design and
Yeah.
And they're totally different now, aren't they? I mean, obviously with pay-per-views, they're all the same. It just gives it the identity, doesn't it? Everything's got its own identity now.
It's how a proper brand split should be.
Yeah.
It should, the show should have their own feel about them, and maybe because obviously the talk is that Fox want to make the show more legitimate, don't they? They want to make it kind of a legitimate wrestling show and want to make it more serious based than maybe what Raw is going to be. And that's good. That should, if they should be doing that, because that gives every show a different feel. And it kind of like, okay, well, I watch Raw because it's more angle based, it's more entertainment based. And I watch SmackDown because you always guaranteed a good 15-20 minute main event or whatever. So yeah, it gives each show a different feel, and that's how it should. That's what a proper brand split should be.
Going on to just to go off into NXT. What are your thoughts on Imperium? Just thought we'd give it a bit, European touch now to the show.
Yeah, Walter's phenomenal, and he's brilliant. A good move as well. Moving, I forgot his name.
Alexander Wolf. Yeah,
Alexander Wolf. Yeah, moving Wolf off the SmackDown because they were just dragging the heels when that never worked. And obviously they moved Killian Dane off it as well.
Yeah,
I met Damo. I did a show for Nick Aldis. I announced a show for Nick Aldis in Grimsby. He did one of the big venues, and he was promoting the show here. And I remember seeing Damo there and going, "Oh my God, he's going to be a star." He just knew it straight off the bat. Having that size and having he had like a real natural charisma about him. But when they got moved to SmackDown, I feel for Eric Young because he's not getting used at all, is he?
Such a superb talent, and it's just there's so many people in the roster, isn't it? It's sometimes.
It's the thing. That's the problem. It's It's when we moan about probably too much wrestling. Oh, it's a 3-hour show, and they've got this, that, and the other. But actually, for the amount of talent they've got, they need another 6 hours a week because they've got that much. And you're right. It's a bit like the later days of WCW when they had 120 people on the roster, and there was people. Was it Lanny Poffo, who notoriously had a 3-year deal and never got used on TV once, and was taking home $500K a year for sitting at home and doing nothing.
Seen that on kayfabe commentaries with Sean Oliver and talking about that. Yeah, it's quite.
Absolutely.
But that's how mismanaged it was, wasn't it? Oh my God, Carry on, mate.
Sorry, you went. Yeah, you said. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think they had Iron Sheik signed as well, and he wasn't using him, and he was getting paid X amount. But it's unreal how that. But that's the problem with guaranteed contracts. But that's a different story. But back onto NXT. I think it's great to see a European faction on that show, and if it gives, and as well with Walter being UK champion, if him being on that show means that the UK brand gets a rub off that as well, brilliant. More power to him.
So hopefully in the pipeline there'll be something with Undisputed Era.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? That would be they put some great matches on them three. The other one was we're talking about maybe, which I heard a rumour of, was moving the OC to NXT for a brief period and feuding with the Undisputed Era. But surely they wouldn't waste. Well, that's not waste of AJ Styles. But surely they wouldn't put AJ Styles on a show. You'd like to think not, anyway.
And obviously Finn's come over, hasn't he? So
and that's a smart move with them going on network. And for Finn, he can be a big fish there and get main event matches and get time and absolutely. It's and what it did for Drew McIntyre. Sometimes having that step backwards to prove yourself will mean more when you go back forward again.
I wish they'd put the belt on. I wish he'd got the title. He had such a build, didn't he? And then they put him with Shane McMahon and Elias. And I was gutted because, love Drew like yourself, met Drew. It was time for him to get the belt, wasn't it?
Yeah, I agree. They have real momentum with him, and I think they've lost that a little bit. Maybe the brand split will bring that back again. But it was almost like they didn't fully trust him for a main event feud, which is such a shame. I hope that comes back, and I hope he gets his chance again.
Trying to think now, who else in the tag division? Because you were saying about tag division when you were younger. who you liking in terms of the tag teams in WWE?
I mean, despite the recent problems, I mean, the Usos are a great team. Obviously, a lot's happened to them recently, hasn't it? And whether or not that means they're going to get taken off TV for a while, I don't know. And obviously, the New Day, in that, you know, when they have, I mean, I think Big E is a tremendous worker. I really, really rate Big E. He's such an athlete. He's got great charisma, and I think they you know, when it's him, Xavier or Kofi, they're always a good team. The Revival are great. I'd wish they'd get more time and more chance to do something, because they're just so crisp. And, you know, in NXT they were having some absolute stormers, weren't they? But they're just not getting a chance to do that on the main roster. Bobby Roode and Dolph, they haven't really had time to really become a proper team, have they? Even though they're champions at the moment. And I think the Viking Raiders as well. I think that they're very, very different. They can, I mean, the movement for their size.
Oh my days! Yeah,
insane, and I hope they give them a serious chance to do something.
It's I just can't get over you saying about Damo, Killian Dane. It's the agility. I mean, going back into the 90s, Vader, Bam Bam, these big guys, the way they move.
Absolutely.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Defies gravity, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I like.
It's like, it shouldn't happen. Yeah.
No, defies belief, doesn't it? But yeah, man.
Absolutely.
Right, Mr. Richard Young, thank you very much for coming on episode 14 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast today.
What a pleasure. Thank you very much, and lovely to chat to you. And thank you very much for having us.
I will get you back on in due course to come on and talk about your shows that you're doing as well. I will get you back on, I promise.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Stu.
Bit of promotion.
Always love self-promotion, absolutely. It's always the best kind.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for coming on, mate.
Many thanks to Zangwills once again for providing the theme music for the show. This track is Patio Paradise by the Zangwills. New EP, In Amongst the Glitter, is out now on all the major streaming sites: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. It's on them all, so please get listening. I will tag them in the show pages as well, so you've got text there so you can get it all sorted.